Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Cage Talk. Today we have an MMA fighter who competed in the middleweight and welterweight division in the UFC. He's former Strikeforce Welterweight Champion. He's also 1999 World Vale-Tudo Federal Championship, 1999 IMA Rumble in the Rockies Championship, 1999 Bass Rutten Invitational 4 Lightweight Champion, 2000 King of Pancrase Middleweight Tournament Champion, 2000 Ring of Fire Middleweight Champion, also 2002 Pancrase Spirit Tour Champion. We have no other than Nate the Great Marquardt. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, good. Thanks, man. I forgot all those tournaments I fought in.
Yeah. It's funny. It's almost like I have a repeat button. So the fighters I have on when I do introduce them and stuff, they'll be like, oh, shit, I don't even remember. I remember having, like, I always mention this, but I think his reaction was the funniest was Dean Thomas. When I was going through Dean Thomas's list, he's like, I was thinking of, like, how old am I? Because I was just a bunch of shit I was listing. But again, man, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you joining.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's just get right into it, man. About your career. I mean, you had a who's of defeats and victories. I mean, your victories, obviously. I mean, you fought Tyron Woodley, destroyed him, which was a classic fight, which we'll get into a little bit later. I mean, you spun Damian Maia around, which I never seen that in my life. That knockout's probably one of the craziest knockouts. I mean, you fought Anderson Silva. I mean, you've gone through a laundry list of fighters. Now, in your career, when you first started, was in 99, correct?
Yeah, I think first fight was 98 or 99.
And what led you into the sport, into combat sports? Because again, you didn't start MMA yet. You started it was Pancrase, right?
Yeah, well, I started training at the age of 16.
Okay.
And basically, I started training because I loved sports all growing up, but I always wanted to be a fighter. I always wanted to do like karate or boxing or wrestling. But I was never able to just because of family circumstances. So, I was playing sports in high school, and then I saw one of the UFCs and decided I'm just going to find a gym to start training that and do that.
Definitely. And when you got the call to UFC, I mean, how did that play out first? You were in UFC first, and then you went to Strikeforce, correct? Or was it vice versa?
Yeah, it was both. So, well, basically, like I was fighting in Pancrase.
Mm-hmm.
I fought there for like 5 or 6 years, and I always wanted to fight in UFC as well. And so I met Dana White at a grappling tournament in Las Vegas.
Okay.
And basically just went up to him and asked him like, hey, I want to fight in UFC. And he said, all right, let's do it. So we got the ball rolling that way. That's how I got in UFC. And then I fought in Strikeforce in 2012, only 2 fights, and then went right back into UFC.
At that time, I mean, there were some fighters that did that would get not bounced out of UFC, but they would kind of like, they would fight a couple times in UFC and then go to Strikeforce at that time or anything like that. Now, your UFC debut was August 6, 2005, right? You fought, I'm trying to think, who did you fight? Oh, Ivan Salivary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, can you go through the mixed emotions of, doing your first debut compared to maybe your 4th or 5th fight in the UFC? And what was that moment like, finally, like you said, you always wanted to fight in the UFC, getting there and your debut and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I feel like there was definitely a lot of pressure kind of put on me at that point. But I felt, I felt prepared, and I had felt a lot of pressure for a lot of my career, to be honest. But definitely, yeah, there's something about fighting in the UFC. I think kind of like maybe the people around the UFC they put a lot of pressure on the fighters, and
Really?
yeah, I feel like it's kind of they kind of elevate the performance. I mean, the thing is, guys want to go out and do their best. They already want to do that. So when you tell them they have to and you better do it, it kind of does feel like puts that extra pressure on, like, oh man, I already wanted to do it. I already wanted to
I get
fight
you.
hard and do well, but now I better do it. So
Did you get that through most of your career in the UFC? Was there a lot of pressure where they're like, hey, because I've seen a couple times where they're like, I had fighters come on and they kind of mention like, hey, all the fights suck. Hopefully, you come out and bang it and you can get fight of the night, or they kind of give you an incentive, but at the same time, they kind of, like push it on you.
yeah, I mean, I definitely felt that pressure throughout the career, but at the same time, yeah, it was, a couple of fights in where I kind of realized that's just how it is, and I need to go in with my own mental mindset and just kind of block everything else out.
So throughout then towards, the middle of your, I mean, like you said, you kind of blocked it out. So you're kind of used to it already, right? You're kind of like, okay. Yeah. It didn't really affect your performance or anything like that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. I mean, that's the thing. Fighters, they train so hard. They put their bodies through so much, and they're disciplined, and there's already pressure on, you've done all this work, but it only comes down to that last 15 minutes, how you perform. And that's how, that's how people are going to remember you. That's going to be the outcome of all your hard work. So if you don't perform well, then it just kind of feels like a waste of all that other time. So people already, they already have a pressure on themselves. I think the trick is to go in and think positive thoughts, and to really think about, why you want to fight, and that you do love fighting, and you want to do well, and you want to perform well, and go out and do your best, because that's really all we can do. People think about winning or losing, but it's not really about that. It's about performing.
Yeah, giving the audience, something to look forward to and stuff like that. And it always plays, especially in the fighters, it can also play the effect of having a crowd and not having a crowd. You think that affected anything for these fighters now that you say they want to perform, good or their best, but sometimes, that motivation comes from like the crowd and stuff. Does that take a good, I don't want to say like part of your game, not game plan, but does the crowd being there does that really affect the fighters, or it just depends on the fighter?
Well, so for sure it depends on the fighter, but when I said you want to go out and perform, I'm not saying necessarily, like like, I don't know, like a gymnast in a show or something. I'm not saying perform like that, or like a dancer. I'm not performing for anyone other than myself. I want to do my best, meaning perform, like go out and have fun like I do in training, do my best, try my hardest, hit my hardest, execute takedowns and everything perfectly, and fight my best fight. That's what I mean by perform. Yes, so I think fighters already want to do that. And yeah, of course, ultimately it is a spectator sport, and that's that's what the outcome is that you get fans from it, and that people enjoy it, and they get to watch all the hard work that you've put in in a performance, right? In an arena. But yeah, I think some people do for sure. They feed on that, the audience and things like that. For me, I always focused on the fight. I'd be in the middle of fights and sometimes just kind of realize like, oh wow, like there's millions of people watching right now. So
Yeah. I mean that's good. That's that's your focus on the fight. I mean the crowd. Sometimes if you listen to the crowd or something, that could lose you a fight. I mean if you're they don't like what they see. A lot of people just want to see knockouts and stuff. They don't really care for the ground stuff. But I mean if you have good position on the ground and stuff, and you hear boos and stuff, and then you just get up, you try to start swinging. I mean that could affect and that could totally change your game plan.
Yeah. And I remember I fought in New Zealand against James Tahuna,
Okay.
and I was dominating the fight, and then all of a sudden he got back up, and he had me against the cage, and he started throwing punches, and I'm like defending, but all of a sudden I hear the crowd going wild, and I was like, oh no, like they think he's now they think he's winning. So it did. I was like, I better get out of here so they know I'm
You know what? You know what? It kind of reminds me of, like in wrestling when like the guy would get like maybe like Hulk Hogan in a headlock, and all of a sudden like they raise his hand, and he drops it. Then the second time he starts shaking, then the crowd gets crazy, and they start like that's what it feels like. Like he gets energy from the crowd and stuff. But like I understand you completely, man, with stuff like that. Like it's nuts. Now with your first fight, there was an issue, right? You got suspended for what, like 4 or 5 months?
With my first fight in the UFC, I took a supplement that had a metabolite in it, and gave like a false positive, and so but yeah, I was suspended,
Mm-hmm.
and then when basically went to the trial, the Nevada State Athletic Commission trial, and they heard my case and lifted the suspension. So
Were you were under contract already with the UFC, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And how many fights were on that contract? Usually for some reason for now I think it's like three fights for the whole year. I don't know what it was back then. Was it the same or a little bit more fights?
I think it was probably 3 or 4.
3 or 4.
Yeah, but I think they can, in Nevada, I believe they can go up to 3 years on the contract, if I remember correctly, and it was kind of the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Even though it was only 4 fights, it was a 3-year contract.
Gotcha. After your debut, you fought Joe Durkinson, and you beat him. And then there was some talk, right? You're starting to heat up. I think at that time they did an interview with you, right? And you already said your intentions. You wanted the middleweight belt, right? You wanted Rich at that time was Rich Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
So Anderson Silva came. Did you think you would succeed, or just kind of not breeze by, but what was your third or fourth fight? Was a title fight, correct, in the UFC, or it wasn't? It was.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's the 4th fight. I fought. I'm trying to remember. Well, yeah, I fought.
I think you fought
Salivary, Joe Dirksen, Dean Lister, and Crafton Wallace, and I think it was after I fought Lister, I got a title shot.
So in your opinion, because this is, I mean, you can say I'm wrong or right. This is my own opinion. So I think that the UFC doesn't really build up their fighters very well. As in boxing, you get a fighter and they have at least 5 to 6, 7, 8 fights under their belt before they get thrown into the big dogs. I feel like with certain fighters, they try to hype them up too early, and then something happens where, like, if you've seen the fight with what's his name, Calvin and Max Holloway. I mean, the other kid is a good fighter, but he's just not on Max Holloway's level yet. I think with a couple other fights, maybe 3 or 4, and then put them in, but they just kind of you win 2, and then all of a sudden you're like in top contention already. And I just feel like it just doesn't benefit the fighters at all. It doesn't help. Did that in your case? Did that happen almost to you? Again, you only fought a couple times in the UFC, and then here you are facing Anderson Silva, which was at that time was the greatest middleweight champion of all time. What do you think about that? Do you agree or you don't?
Well, I mean, I think at that point, I'm sure I had well over 20 fights, I would guess. And yeah, so I think, I don't know. I think I was ready. I just, yeah, it's difficult in mixed martial arts, especially when you're fighting top level guys fight after fight. You know, a 3-4 fight win streak for anybody is a big deal. I mean, unless you're taking lower level guys, which, I mean, UFC does have some lower level guys now, where if you took a bunch of those, yeah, you could build up a fighter kind of like they do in boxing. But once you hit a certain level with the different styles that guys have, you know, you have guys that are more grapplers, guys that are more strikers, you have counter fighters, you have power punchers, and you have aggressive guys. So you have all different kinds of styles. I mean, it'd be hard for a guy to go undefeated for more than that, and suddenly it's like his stock is high. It seems like the UFC needs to cash in on that, and likely if he's fighting guys at that level, he's ready for a title shot. So, I mean, yeah, I think for sure in MMA, I think it's a little different than boxing, because unless you're going to build up a guy by feeding him lower level guys who are lower than his level, you know, and give him like 10 fights like that in a couple of years to build him up. I mean, that's one way to do it. Or, you know, when he fights 3 or 4 of the top guys, then he's ready for a title shot. I think that's probably better.
Gotcha. No, I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's a different perspective, so I'm all ears on that, man. That's awesome. Now,
yeah, because here's like I said, so you think about some of the top guys in, like, say, the welterweight division right now in UFC, and any one of those guys could be the champion. So if you're fighting 4 or 5 of those guys, I mean, you could fight for the title and then fight those guys anyway. So, you know, I mean, there's
makes sense.
It's no the title fight is not necessarily any harder than any of the other fights.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, when you entered the UFC, right? And again, like you said, your whole goal was to capture the middleweight title. You were in the mix already. You had 4. I think right then, when you watched the Anderson Silva versus Rich Franklin, the first, well, I think no, by then, did he? I'm trying to think of how many times he already defended his title. Was that his first? It wasn't his first time defending the title, or was with you? I don't remember.
No, he had fought. No, he fought Travis Lutter,
right?
Yeah.
So at that time, you already knew who you're going up against. Like, okay, it's Anderson Silva. How was your preparation for that, and what was your game plan going to for that fighter?
I mean, the preparation was not much different than previous fights. You know, it was a 5-round fight, I think, right?
Yeah. Well,
what was is that what they did back then? Now I'm trying to remember if they changed the rule. But anyway, I feel like it's supposed to be 5 rounds even back then.
Yeah. I think the championship rounds were 5. It's just the main events weren't 5. That's what it was.
That's what it was. Yeah. Okay. But so, I mean, you know, we did. Although I was already training more rounds than 3 in a sparring practice. I mean, we'd go 8, 10 rounds sometimes. So we didn't change the training very much. And we did definitely look at the game plan and had a plan against him, and went in and executed it for the most part well, and then just had a mental lapse right at the last minute or last 30 seconds of the round, and that's where I got caught.
I mean, again, you could have easily been middleweight and welterweight. I think with your potential and your skill set. Again, you had good stand up and your wrestling was really good and strong and stuff like that. Now facing Anderson Silva, that whole preparation, is your title fight. Going into it. Um, how was the pressure? Like you said, there was pressure before with the UFC fight. People outside, looking in, and now it's your title fight. Were you more relaxed, calm?
Yeah, I was pretty good. The only thing that bugged me was the interviews the week of the fight. We had so many interviews,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess the issue with it was like and this is what I wasn't used to, was like every interview would ask the same exact questions virtually, and it's like after you're hearing something so many times, you start to kind of like question, well, maybe that is true, or maybe I do need to watch out for this aspect or whatever, so it can affect you for sure.
So what was something that was being said to you quite often that you kind of it's almost like a mind fuck almost, right? Like you're kind of just like
Well, I think I remember everyone asking kind of like about his stand up,
mm-hmm.
and I mean, yeah, so it's like I trained with world-class fighter. I trained with world-class boxers and kickboxers. So, I mean, in my mind, I was like, yeah, I know he's going to be good, but I'm good too. And I can fight with those guys. But then you just hear it so many times and you kind of start to question like, oh, maybe I should watch out for that. But then in the fight, I kind of realized just a minute in, I was doing well on the feet with him and was able to get him down. And we were like I said, we executed the game plan. It wasn't until the ref stood us up, and then I kind of had a mental lapse and departed from the game plan.
So mental lapse, as in you question your game plan, because apparently your game plan was to take him down, control him, correct?
No, the game plan was to basically to fight with him standing.
Okay.
And yeah, look for sure when the opportunity presented itself to shoot and take him down, which is exactly what happened. But then on the ground, I felt like the fight was stood up prematurely.
Okay.
And right as I was posturing up to do damage, and the ref stood us up, and I was kind of upset, So instead of just forgetting about it and going back to the game plan, I decided to rush back in for a takedown when it wasn't there, So I was like, oh, we're just going to start over where we left it. But that didn't work out because I took a bad shot, and then it ended up getting reversed. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the start of the end. So.
Gotcha. Do you agree about someone say I think Joe Rogan says this a lot, which I think I agree with it, is when if someone he doesn't agree with the stand-ups. I think he says that if someone gets taken down, it's their job to learn, regardless of what's happening, if there's nothing happening, it's their job to try to stand up, because I mean, in a fight, no one's going to stop the fight, no one will stand back up again. So do you agree with that? Do you think that we should stop the stand-ups?
I mean, there is a problem because there's no objective standard. So like one referee,
mm-hmm. I agree.
When let's say you want to keep it standing and then you get down on the ground, one referee will let you on the ground with no punches being thrown or no damaging punches, at least no damage being caused, and then another ref will stand it up as soon, really quickly. So that's the problem, is the objective standard. Where's the objective rule that says when it's going to be stood up and when it's not? It's kind of,
it's basically when the ref thinks it's, or he hears the crowd. Sometimes the crowd influences the ref.
Right. The crowd influences his, it's all on the ref to decide which
That
that's
sucks.
a lot of pressure for the ref too. They need to clarify the rules.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's something that needs to be done. But I didn't even think about that. Like you're right. Depends on
But I
which
mean,
ref.
it makes sense too if the if nothing's happening, that also makes sense. But for sure, if the guy's advancing or defending or something like that, I think that's where, because the guy on bottom might be trying to sweep or trying to submit, and you're defending it, and then but you want to be on top and you want to be there, but then suddenly they stand it up because you weren't punching, but then it's like you had to defend the position.
Yeah.
So if that's the rule, if there has to be punches thrown, at least make that the rule, or make an objective standard so the fighters can know for sure that they can either keep it on the ground or stand it up or whatever.
Well, if you think about it, that could also cause the person on top to maybe throw something they didn't want to, just because they don't want to get it. They don't want to be a stalemate, but they're trying to defend or they're trying to work a submission off. But now you have to throw a punch, so the ref is like, okay, he threw a punch. That could also affect the fighter on top. So there's a lot that goes in. You're right, and I don't know if something that's going to be fixed. I don't think it will be fixed. I think, unfortunately, it's like the 10-8 rounds or the boxing rounds, the 10-9. I've talked to a lot of fighters that don't agree with that because they said it works in favor. That's boxing system, but not MMA. It's completely different. So the judging and the scoring on that is another big question.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, for sure.
All right. So after your Anderson Silva fight, you fought in UFC 81, Tales Lates, and that was a little bit of a concert. That fight was a little bit. Okay, if you explain anyone, if no one's ever seen that fight, what actually happened in the fight, and
yeah, it was a good fight. It was actually entertaining for sure to watch. And Tali's a very tough guy. What happened, I'm not sure what round it was, maybe first or second round, but he was, I'm trying to think. I think I had taken him down, and he was against the cage, and he tried to get up. And so I was waiting for him to take his hand off the floor so I could throw the knee, and I felt his hips go up, but he was still, I think he still had a knee on the ground or something. So I threw the knee, unintentionally, making it illegal. And so I got a point taken away from that. But that was, like I said, first or second round. Basically, if you look at the rounds, I won all 3 rounds, but I lost the point there. And then
that was the elbow too, right?
Yeah. Then in the last round, I was again winning the round, and he shot in, and I sprawled out, and I was over the top of him. I threw him an elbow on his ear, and the ref stopped the fight, took another point, and said that it was at the back of the head. And yeah, I didn't agree with that, but that's what it was. But yeah, it was a very good fight.
Do you remember who the ref was? I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it was Herb Dean.
Really?
Yeah. But
and then that gave him he fought Anderson Silva next. So if you would have won that in the rematch for Anderson Silva, do you think you would have taken it?
I mean, of course, you always go out and you expect to win. You have confidence and believe in yourself, but yeah, I think I could beat anyone at that weight, to be honest.
Then you fought Martin Kamen and you destroyed him. Yeah, that was a beatdown. That was one of my favorite. I mean, you had a couple of knockouts again, like I said, but that Martin Kamen that knockout was pretty nasty. But I think like I mentioned before, that Damian Maia. I mean, and thankfully, I mean, you didn't punch him or anything. You just looked because you turned the man around in midair. I mean, how's
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of it was his. He was throwing a kick, and so I hit him.
with your momentum?
And
I mean,
his momentum turned him around really.
it still looked nice. I mean, that's always a good highlight to look at. And then I think of the Wilson Govea fight as well. I mean, you threw some. I mean, you had a really nice combination against the cage with the spinning back fist, which was really nice.
Yeah.
The one that you fought Chael Sonnen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one I wanted you to. I was dying for you to win, not because I made a bet, because I don't bet, but just because I never liked Chael at that time. I like him now, but at that time, I mean, you were the fighter I liked, and I remember that fight. And I was just so upset, not because, I mean, obviously you lost, just because it was Chael. I was just it was just so upsetting. But again, he's a good wrestler. He's a really, really good wrestler, and I mean, it happens, right?
Yeah, and I think we got fight of the night actually on that fight. So yeah, it was a good fight.
It was really good. After that, was your contract up in the UFC after that, or because I remember you being at one point you were released from the UFC, but I think after the Anderson Silva fight, you had a new deal, and then after that, after those couple fights, then you were released from the UFC, correct?
Well, I don't know. I don't remember all the order of the contracts and stuff, to be honest, because
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
pretty much they would, they would renegotiate every 2 or 3 fights. So
Okay.
just depending. Yeah.
Because I know at one point you pulled out a fight, and then they released you randomly, which was weird.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. I think that's what it was. I think you were supposed to who you were supposed to fight. I think it was Anthony Johnson or something like that. And then you couldn't fight, and then you were released from the UFC randomly. I have no idea.
Yeah, you're talking about when I was supposed to fight Rick Story. So it was Anthony Johnson.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Rick Story was the person. Yeah.
It was first Anthony Johnson, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so.
And then you went in.
That's when I went to Strikeforce for the 2 fights, and
you did very well. You did awesome in Strikeforce. I mean, again, I never seen that Tyson Woodley, like that was beyond the way you finished him off. I mean, again, if no one's ever seen that fight, it's very, very impressive, especially since after that he went to the UFC and he became welterweight champion, stuff like that. But that's why I was saying, like, your stand-up and your ground game and just your overall average, I mean, you could have easily continued competing in the UFC, which you did, you returned. But I'm just saying for, like, welterweight, middleweight, I mean, regardless, I mean that fight, I still watch it to this day. Now, is that one of your victories that, you hold dear? Because, again, you won the Strikeforce championship. Is that one of the ones that that you're most proud of?
definitely it was a tough fight and trained very hard for that fight. And Tyron is a very good fighter, so
Definitely. Now, you returned to UFC. You dropped down, right? You went to welterweight, or that was already?
Yeah, I did. For 2 fights.
Yep.
Then I went back up to 85 and finished my career at 85.
Definitely. When you were towards the end of your career, did you already? What kind of led you into, like, yeah, this is, I'd rather just go off in the sunset and stuff like that? What was there anything, or is there any fight in particular that made you, like, maybe this is, I'm over it, or maybe you lost the will to fight? Was there anything like that?
No, basically, my last 3 fights, I fought tough guys, and I Actually, I mean, I thought I won all 3 fights, but I ended up losing close decisions. One of them was a split decision. And, I just kind of felt like maybe that was God's way of saying that, that it's not
Mm-hmm.
my path anymore. And I had already started seminary and was already looking at a different direction anyway. So,
Okay.
but actually, it's kind of crazy how it works because I thought I was done, and so I retired and
Mm-hmm.
was finishing school, and God's made it perfectly clear that I'm coming back. So
You are?
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. When's your next fight? Are you allowed to say that? Because I know some people are like, I can't say that much right now.
No, well, so I knew pretty much soon after I retired that I was going to come back, but I finished school and kept training, and now, like, I've been on a journey to get the best training this last year pretty much, and that's what's led me here. That's why I'm here in Florida at Sanford MMA.
All right.
So right here, man, I love the guys here. The team's excellent. The fighters are awesome. The coaches are awesome. The facility is awesome. It's like everything here is so good. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm finally starting to get in shape where I feel like my old self. And yeah, so I'm I had a fight offered to me that was a decent offer. But we'll see. Like, I'm still open for offers because nothing's in a contract yet. I had a contract, and we looked it over and asked for some modifications, and we're waiting modifications, but it's been a while, so we're still open for any contract, I guess, at this point.
That's awesome, man. Again, I hope nothing but happiness. Hopefully, you get that contract, you get a fight, and you know what? You've always been a fan favorite. You've been a favorite of mine. So regardless if it's in UFC, Strikeforce, wherever you're fighting, man, I'll be always rooting for you, man. So I do. I'm glad that you found your middle ground, and you're going back to something that you love doing.
Thank you.
All right. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Nate, for coming on. I do appreciate the time that you've given. The fans, they still love you. And again, like I said, I like to watch that Damian Maya fight, a couple of times. But I do appreciate you coming on, and I hope you have a great day, and God bless you, man.
Yeah, thanks. God bless you.